morning, my friends. I'm Pastor Ben Hayes from First Baptist Church, Dadeville, Alabama, bringing you our thought for the day on this wonderful Wednesday. And it is wonderful because we're getting a little rain this morning. What a blessing that is. I hope it rains a good bit today. We certainly do need it, and we are thankful for God taking care of us through the night. Today, we've got our men's and women's Bible studies at 10 a.m. No family night supper tonight. Miss Carolyn is sick. Pray for her. But at 5:45, we'll meet for prayer meeting and Bible study. Children and youth activities at 5:45, and then, of course, choir practice following that. So come and be a part of all of those opportunities. Right now, we're in 1 Corinthians 16, picking up in verse 10. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. But I think one of the great responsibilities we have as Christians is to prepare the next generation of leaders to take over those leadership roles. I think that everybody ought to be training someone, mentoring someone, discipling someone to take their place. Now, whether you're a pastor, whether you're a Sunday school teacher, whether you're a deacon, whether you are putting up the tables in the fellowship hall, whether you're doing the flowers in the sanctuary, we have a responsibility to God and to His church to make sure that all those things continue on by training that next generation of leaders, whomever they may be. And it may be that you don't have any of those jobs in the church, but you need to be training someone up to be the disciple maker that you are. And if you're not a disciple maker, you need to find somebody who will help you become one. That's what Paul's talking about in verse 10. He says, if Timothy comes, Timothy's that young pastor that is timid. He's got a timidity problem. He says, see that he may be with you without fear. In other words, don't make life difficult on him. Help him to understand what he needs to be doing, because he does the work of the Lord as I also do. See, here's what Paul's doing. Paul is putting his seal of approval on Timothy, saying, hey, he is my apprentice. He's the guy that is going to be moving into my position. So understand he is doing the work of the Lord, but he needs some help. He needs some strength. By the way, that's another good point here. Every minister needs the support and the help of the congregation. We cannot do this job on our own. We just can't. Whether it is teaching, whether it is ministering, whether it is evangelism, whatever it might be, we need the help of folks in the congregation to take up that mantle of obligation and serve our Heavenly Father. If we want to reach our world with the gospel of Jesus Christ, we've got to reach our community with the gospel of Jesus Christ. And no one person can do that for themselves. So Paul continues on. He says, look, do not let anyone despise him. In his letter to Timothy, in 1 Timothy, he says, let no man despise your youth. Timothy was a young guy. Don't know how old he was, but he was young compared to most of the apostles and teachers and preachers of that day. And people had a tendency to look down on him and say, hey, go away. You don't know what you're talking about. Paul says, don't despise him for whatever reason. And don't let anyone else despise him. But let him be the pastor that he needs to be and help him to do that. And then he says, but send him on his journey in peace, that he may come to you, for I'm waiting for him with the brethren. So here's the deal. Timothy is on his journey, and he's going to stop off at Corinth, checking on the church, maybe preaching a little bit, teaching a little bit, and then they need to send him on so that he can get to the Apostle Paul and help him out in what he's doing. And later, in his letters to Timothy, as Paul is in his final days in Rome, he's asking for Timothy to come to him. This is not that time, but that's what Paul needed, was Timothy to come and be with him in his ministry. Now, I want you to understand something. There's something else we need to talk about here in all of this. Sometimes we look at young Christian leaders with a bit of skepticism. And while they need to become seasoned Christian leaders, the way that they do that is for us to pray for them, to help them, to mentor them. I mentioned yesterday my first church, Putnam, Alabama. I was 19 years old, and they let me be their pastor. And what a great church that was, as they loved on me and Sonia, as they helped us to really grow in our understanding what it means to be the pastor of a church. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to invest our lives in that next generation so that they can come up understanding what their responsibilities are and seeing that, hey, we're not afraid to follow them. We're not afraid to support them. We're not afraid to give them advice, right? And constructive criticism. Constructive criticism. But we're going to love on them and let them lead us. It's kind of like when I go to a doctor these days. Used to, I was real young and they were real old. Now the tables have changed. Think about that. We want somebody who has that expertise, who has that training, who has that energy of youth. Be blessed. I'll see you back here tomorrow.